and someone who understands the mounting anticipation, the anguish that these hostage families are feeling, is Liz Naftali. Her great niece, Abigail Idan, was one of the first hostages taken by Hamas. This happened on October 7th, of course. Abigail was just 3 years old. And during the attack, the unspeakable happened. Her parents were killed right in front of her. Her father's body shielding little Abigail, who eventually was about to make it to a neighbor's house before she was taken hostage. She was held in captivity for 51 days, turning 4 while she was kidnapped. And Liz Naftali, author and hostage release advocate, joins us once again. I always so appreciate you taking the time to join us on this. And, you know, for those viewers who don't remember, if we can start with your personal story, can you recall the moments that you realized that your Abigail was coming home? I mean, what was going through your mind and your heart? And what do you imagine is going through the minds of these current hostage families?
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. So Abigail was released after 51 days. And it was 51 days of not knowing anything about her. But once we knew there was a deal in the works, it was this sheer panic to make sure that we actually saw her in my niece's arms. And I will say, until we saw her in my niece's arms with my sister-in-law, we didn't believe it. Because what we learned is that until that moment, it's just horrific, and you don't sleep and you can't breathe. And I know what it is for 51 days. I have no idea what it means for almost 2 years. On Tuesday is 2 years. And just thinking about for those families, but thinking about those hostages, and they know there's a deal and they're waiting to get out. And so when you ask, this time is so tense. But this is the first time since March we've seen an opening for hostages to come home, and it's important.
It's very important. And I mean, she was so little going through this, 51 days, turning 4 years old in captivity. Do we know anything about the conditions that she was held in, what she faced, and how is she doing today?
Look, she was held in the dark. She's a child. She had no screens, no games, nothing to play with, no food, one piece of pita bread, no hygiene for 51 days. And I think about these hostages that are now also kept in the dark, and so many of them underground with no fresh air, and they're being starved and they're being abused. And that is for 2 years. But what I can say is that the minute Abigail came home and she saw her siblings and her cousins, even with the loss of her parents, that was the first smile. And what we know is that each time a hostage comes home and they are in their loved one's arms, first, the nation of Israel, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, is relieved and happy. And the world sees this. And this is what we are waiting for. And for Abigail, she's had time to restart her life. And she goes to school and she plays, and her cousins and her siblings, they've been able, after trauma of October 7th, they've started to live life. And now we need these people to come home and for them to live their life. These 20 men that we know are alive and have been suffering for 2 years. Some have not had any, they've not had any medical attention. And they were injured on October 7th, 2 years ago.
Wow. And you have thrown yourself into hostage release advocacy. And I so admire the work that you've continued to do. Help explain to us, you know, just how important these releases are, even for those who are no longer with us. What does it mean to those families?
Look, a family who knows that their loved one is deceased, and there's 28, and they just need to bring them home to give them a proper burial and to be able to know that they gave them the honor of burying them, but they are home. Home is relative. But for the people who know that their loved ones are alive, just waiting for their people to come home is the beginning of first healing for these families, whether they are deceased or alive, but it is the beginning of healing for all of us. And it is also the beginning of a future for the people living in Gaza, and for them to have a future, and for Israeli children and Gazan children not to be traumatized, not to be in war. So each person that comes back, and all 48 have to come back, that has to be this. And I say to President Trump and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, there's no partial deal, and they understand it's got to be all 48 hostages. And again, that is something that we all have to push for and understand that that has to be the beginning of a deal that stops the fighting.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.